Veteran Wyoming cowboy Jack Henderson had been ranching in blizzard country for 47 years, and he thought he'd seen everything the brutal winter could throw at humanity. But on a morning when temperatures had plummeted to -28 degrees, when he spotted a wild Mustang standing completely still in the middle of an open field, not grazing, not moving, just standing like a sentinel over something in the snow, Jack knew he was looking at something he'd never witnessed before. As he rode closer through knee-deep drifts, his heart began to pound. The horse wasn't alone. Beneath that wild stallion, barely visible in the snow, was a human body. A woman, frozen, motionless, possibly dead. And this wild horse, an animal that should have fled from human presence, refused to leave her side. What Jack discovered in the next 60 seconds would test everything he knew about survival, about animal behavior, and about the thin line between life and death in the unforgiving Wyoming winter. Before we reveal how this woman ended up frozen in the wilderness and why a wild horse became her only chance at survival, subscribe now and hit that notification bell. This rescue story will leave you breathless. Jack Henderson woke at 4:30 a.m. to a silence that veteran ranchers recognize immediately, the deadly silence of extreme cold. The kind of cold that stops everything. The kind of cold that kills. He checked the thermometer outside his kitchen window, -28 degrees Fahrenheit. With the wind chill that had been howling through the night, the effective temperature was probably closer to -50. This was dangerous cold. Life-threatening cold. The kind of morning where Jack's first thought was for his livestock. His cattle, his horses, checking that automatic waterers hadn't frozen, that animals had access to shelter. At 69 years old, Jack had spent his entire adult life on this ranch in the high country of northwestern Wyoming, not far from the Montana border. His property covered 3,200 acres, much of it bordering Bureau of Land Management land where wild Mustang herds roamed free. Jack had always respected those wild horses, admired their toughness, their ability to survive conditions that would kill domestic animals. By 6 a.m., Jack had checked his barn, broken ice on water troughs, and confirmed his cattle were safe in their winter pasture near the windbreak. The sun was just beginning to rise, that pale, cold winter sun that provides light but no warmth. Jack saddled Ranger, his 15-year-old quarter horse gelding, tough, steady, and experienced in winter conditions. He needed to check the far eastern boundary fence line, an area that was particularly vulnerable to damage from snow load and where cattle sometimes got tangled if they pushed against fencing looking for shelter. The ride out took 40 minutes through snow that was thigh-deep on Ranger in places. Jack's face was covered except for his eyes. He wore a balaclava, heavy scarf, insulated hat under his cowboy hat, and ski goggles to protect against the biting wind. Despite layers of clothing, he could feel the cold penetrating, numbing exposed skin within seconds. As he rode across what he called the East Pasture, a large open area about 2 miles from his main ranch buildings, Jack noticed something unusual. In the middle of the field, probably 300 yards away, stood a single horse. At this distance, Jack couldn't tell if it was one of his or a wild Mustang, but the behavior was strange. The horse was standing completely still. Not grazing. Not moving. Just standing in one spot, head lowered, in a posture that was unusual for a horse in extreme cold. Horses in winter typically moved constantly to maintain body heat, pawed through snow to reach grass, or huddled together in groups for warmth. A lone horse standing motionless was a red flag. Jack urged Ranger toward the distant horse, working his way through the deep snow. As he got closer, details became clear. It was definitely a wild horse, a Mustang stallion, probably about 8 years old, with a distinctive dark dappled gray coat and black mane. Jack had seen this horse before, recognized it as part of the Red Desert Band that sometimes ranged onto his property. But it was the stallion's behavior that made Jack's blood run cold. The horse was standing over something. Something dark against the white snow. Something that wasn't moving. At 150 yards, Jack pulled out his binoculars with shaking hands. He focused, adjusted, and felt his heart stop. There was a person lying in the snow. A human body, face down, arms spread, partially buried in snow drift. The wild stallion was standing directly over the body, positioned protectively, like a guard dog watching over its master. "Oh my God," Jack breathed into his frozen scarf. He immediately kicked Ranger into a faster pace, pushing through the snow as quickly as the deep drifts would allow. As Jack approached, the wild stallion raised its head and watched him carefully. Jack expected the horse to bolt. Wild Mustangs avoided humans, especially at close range. But the stallion didn't run. Instead, it shifted position slightly, moving to place itself more directly between Jack and the body in the snow. The horse was protecting the person. "Easy, boy. Easy," Jack called out softly, stopping Ranger about 30 feet away. "I'm here to help. I'm not going to hurt anyone." The stallion's ears flicked toward Jack's voice, assessing, deciding. For a long, tense moment, the two horses and the cowboy formed a frozen tableau in the bitter cold. Then, incredibly, the wild stallion took 2 steps sideways, not running away but moving enough to allow Jack access to the person while still maintaining a protective presence. Jack dismounted quickly and rushed to the body in the snow. It was a woman, probably in her 30s, wearing inadequate clothing for these conditions. A light jacket, jeans, hiking boots, no hat, no gloves. Her dark hair was frozen stiff with ice. Her exposed skin was pale with a blue tinge, the unmistakable color of severe hypothermia. Jack pulled off his heavy glove and pressed 2 fingers against her neck, feeling for a carotid pulse. Nothing. He shifted his fingers, trying again. Still nothing. He moved his hand to her wrist. There, faint, incredibly faint, but there. A pulse. Maybe 40 beats per minute when it should have been 70. She was alive, but barely. "Ma'am? Can you hear me? I'm here to help you." No response. Jack gently turned her head to check if she was breathing. He saw the faintest movement of her chest, saw a tiny cloud of condensation near her blue lips. She was breathing, but the breaths were shallow and dangerously slow. Jack's rancher instincts and his wilderness first aid training kicked in immediately. Severe hypothermia. Core body temperature probably somewhere between 82 to 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Anything below 90 was critical. She needed heat, needed it immediately, or she would die within the hour. But moving someone with severe hypothermia was dangerous. It could cause cardiac arrest. He had to be incredibly careful. He grabbed his radio, but his heart sank as he saw the no signal indicator. They were too far from the ranch, in a dead zone. His cell phone showed the same, no service. He was completely alone except for his horse, a wild stallion, and a dying woman. Jack pulled the emergency blanket from his saddlebag, a metallic survival blanket designed to reflect body heat. He carefully wrapped it around the woman without moving her body more than necessary. Then he stripped off his heavy winter coat and laid it over her as an additional layer. The cold bit into him immediately through his remaining layers, but he ignored it. The wild stallion watched all of this intently, never moving more than a few feet away, alert and protective. Jack found himself talking to the horse as he worked. "How long have you been standing here, boy? How long have you been protecting her?" Jack looked at the snow around the woman's body. It had been disturbed, trampled. The pattern suggested the stallion had been circling, pacing, standing guard for hours. "You kept the wind off her, didn't you? You stood over her, blocked the wind, shared your body heat. You've been saving her life." The evidence was clear. Without the stallion's presence, breaking the wind and providing some radiant heat from its large body, the woman would have already been dead. The horse had bought her precious time. But now Jack faced an impossible situation. The woman needed emergency medical treatment immediately, hospital treatment, warming protocols for fluids, cardiac monitoring. But she was 2 miles from his ranch, in snow too deep for his truck to navigate, with no communication, and moving her on horseback in her condition could kill her. Jack looked at the wild stallion and a crazy idea formed in his mind. An idea so unlikely, so dependent on animal cooperation, that it bordered on impossible. But it was the only chance. Jack had an old travois back at his ranch, a traditional Native American transport device that attached to a horse and dragged behind it, designed for moving supplies or injured people. He'd used it years ago for moving large game and for ranch work, but it had been sitting and used in his barn for a decade. If he could get back to the ranch, retrieve the travois, and return, he could transport the woman without having to lift her onto a horse. But that would take at least 90 minutes. Ride back, hitch the travois, ride back here. In negative 28-degree weather, the woman wouldn't survive 90 more minutes, even with the blankets and coat protecting her. Unless... Jack looked at the wild stallion, still standing guard, still watching intently. The horse hadn't left. It had stayed when Jack arrived, had allowed access to the woman, had remained protective. This stallion was demonstrating behavior that was extraordinary for a wild horse. "I need you to stay with her," Jack said to the horse, feeling foolish talking to a wild animal but doing it anyway. "I need you to keep standing over her, keep blocking the wind, keep her warm. I have to go get equipment to move her, but I'll be back. Can you do that? Can you stay?" The stallion's ears flicked toward Jack's voice. The horse took a step closer to the woman, lowered its head, and exhaled warm breath near her face, an action so deliberate it seemed almost conscious. Jack made his decision. He carefully adjusted the emergency blanket and his coat to maximize insulation, then did something that went against all his survival training. He stripped off his insulated overpants and laid them over the woman's legs, the area most vulnerable to frostbite and furthest from her core. Now wearing just jeans and negative 28-degree cold, Jack mounted Ranger and turned toward home. "Stay with her," he called back to the wild stallion. "Please stay with her." The ride back to the ranch was agony. The cold attacked Jack's legs mercilessly. Within minutes, he'd lost sensation in his feet and lower legs. By the time he could see his ranch buildings, his teeth were chattering so violently he'd bitten his tongue, tasting blood. He practically fell off Ranger at the barn, his legs barely functional from cold. His ranch hand, Miguel, came running from the equipment shed. "Boss, what happened? Where's your coat?" No time." Jack's words came out slurred from cold. "Frozen woman. East pasture. Need the travois. Need warming blankets. Call 911. Tell them medical emergency, severe hypothermia, 2 miles east of ranch at the Big Dead Cottonwood. Helicopter if possible. Go." While Miguel made the emergency call, Jack forced his frozen legs to move, to help Miguel retrieve the old travois from the barn storage. They hitched it to Ranger, loaded it with insulated blankets, hand warmers, a thermos of warm, not hot. Hot liquids could cause shock in hypothermia victims, sweet liquid and emergency medical supplies. The 911 dispatcher reported that an air ambulance helicopter would be dispatched from Billings, Montana, the nearest facility equipped for severe hypothermia. But weather conditions and distance meant ETA was 90 minutes at best. Ground ambulance was being sent as backup but would take even longer. "We have to go now," Jack said, his words still slurred from cold. He was beginning to shiver violently, his body's attempt to generate heat. He needed to warm up, needed to take care of himself, but the woman in the snow had less time than he did. Miguel, a man in his 40s who'd worked for Jack for 15 years, made a decision. "I'm coming with you. You can barely stand, boss. You're hypothermic yourself." There was no time to argue. Both men mounted horses, Jack on Ranger with the travois, Miguel on another steady gelding, and headed back toward the east pasture. Jack had pulled on emergency winter gear, but his legs were still dangerously cold, still not responding properly. The return journey seemed to take forever, though it was actually only 35 minutes. With each passing minute, Jack's fear grew. Would they be too late? Would the woman's heart have given out? And most improbably, would the wild stallion still be there? As they approached the location, Jack's heart leaped. The wild stallion was still there. The magnificent gray horse stood in exactly the same protective position over the woman, hadn't abandoned her, had maintained his vigil despite the deadly cold and the passage of time. "I'll be damned," Miguel breathed. That wild horse stayed with her. They approached carefully, not wanting to spook the stallion now after he'd been so cooperative. But again the wild horse showed no fear, no aggression, only watchful protectiveness. As Jack and Miguel dismounted and approached with the travois, the stallion moved aside, allowing them access while maintaining close proximity. Jack checked the woman immediately. Still breathing, still had a pulse, but both were weaker than before. They were running out of time. Her lips were darker blue, her skin a more pronounced grayish-white. Core temperature was continuing to drop despite the protection. Working together, Jack and Miguel carefully positioned the travois next to the woman. Moving a severe hypothermia victim was dangerous. The cold blood from her extremities flowing back to her heart could cause cardiac arrest. But leaving her here meant certain death. They had no choice. "Slow and gentle," Jack instructed. "Keep her as horizontal as possible. Don't bend her joints more than necessary." They lifted together, moving the woman's rigid body as a single unit, and positioned her on the travois. They surrounded her with insulated blankets, activated hand warmers and positioned them near, but not directly against, her core, her neck, armpits and groin where major blood vessels ran close to the surface. Too much heat too fast could cause shock, but they needed to slow her heat loss and begin gradual rewarming. Throughout this entire process, the wild stallion stood watching, occasionally taking a step closer, once lowering his head to smell the woman as if checking on her condition. The horse's behavior was beyond anything Jack had witnessed in 47 years around animals. "Okay, she's secure," Jack said. "Let's move. Easy pace, we can't jolt her." They began the journey back to the ranch, moving as quickly as safety allowed. The travois slid over the snow, a much smoother ride than horseback would have been. Miguel rode ahead to break trail, making the path easier for Jack and the travois to follow. And then something extraordinary happened. The wild stallion began following them. Jack noticed it first, a shape keeping pace about 50 yards behind them. The stallion was following the travois, following the woman he'd been protecting, refusing to abandon her even now. Miguel looked behind us. Miguel turned in his saddle and his eyes widened. That wild horse is following us. Boss, that's not normal behavior. Nothing about this morning has been normal. The strange procession continued across the snowy landscape. 2 domestic horses, 2 cowboys, an unconscious woman on a travois, and a wild Mustang stallion maintaining a protective distance but refusing to leave. 30 minutes into the journey back, Jack felt the woman stir slightly on the travois. It was the first voluntary movement she'd made. He called for Miguel to stop and they checked her condition. Her eyelids fluttered. Her breathing had strengthened slightly. The insulated blankets and hand warmers were working. She wasn't warming up rapidly, but she'd stopped getting colder. They'd stabilized her decline. "Stay with us, ma'am," Jack said softly. "We're getting you to help. You're going to make it." Behind them, the stallion whinnied, a sound that seemed almost like encouragement. They reached the ranch 45 minutes after leaving the east pasture. The air ambulance helicopter was already circling, looking for a place to land. Miguel had radioed ahead, and his wife had marked out a landing zone in the large flat area near the main barn. The medical crew rushed to meet them as they arrived, 2 paramedics with specialized cold weather rescue training. They immediately took over care of the woman, checking vitals, hooking up warming equipment and monitoring devices. "Core temp is 84 degrees, one paramedic reported. "She's critical but stable." "How long was she exposed?" "We don't know," Jack said. "I found her about 90 minutes ago. But based on her condition and the weather, she'd probably been out there at least 3 to 4 hours before that." 4 to 5 hours total in negative 28 degrees? The paramedic looked shocked. She shouldn't be alive. While the medical team worked on the woman, preparing her for helicopter transport, Jack noticed the wild stallion. The horse had followed them all the way to the ranch and now stood at the fence line of the main corral, about 60 feet away, watching intently. A sheriff's deputy had arrived by ground vehicle, responding to the emergency call. Deputy Sarah Mitchell, who Jack had known for years, approached with a clipboard. "Jack, I need to get details while they're fresh. Start from the beginning. How did you find her?" Jack explained everything. The morning ride, spotting the stallion, finding the woman, the wild horse's protective behavior, the rescue. As he spoke, Deputy Mitchell's expression grew more amazed. "So this wild horse stood over her for hours in deadly cold and then followed you back here?" "Jack, that's extraordinary." "I know what I saw, Sarah. I'm not doubting you. That's remarkable animal behavior." She paused. "We've had a missing person report. Woman named Dr. Lisa Brennan, 34 years old, wildlife researcher from UC Davis. She was studying wild horse behavior in this region, was staying at the Red Pine Lodge about 20 miles from here. Her rental car was found abandoned yesterday evening on County Road 47. You know it, the road that runs along the southern edge of your property." Jack knew it well. That's rough country. If her car broke down or got stuck, she might have tried to walk for help. In these temperatures without proper gear, that would be suicidal. People make bad decisions when they panic. If her car died and she had no phone signal, she might have thought her only option was to walk. The paramedics were loading the woman onto the helicopter. One of them jogged over to Jack. "We're transporting to Billings Medical Center. They have specialized hypothermia rewarming protocol. If you hadn't found her when you did, she'd be dead. You saved her life." Jack shook his head. "That wild horse saved her life. I just finished what he started." After the helicopter lifted off, Deputy Mitchell pulled up something on her phone. "Jack, look at this. It's from Dr. Brennan's research files. The lodge manager gave us access when she was reported missing." She showed Jack a photo. It was a research image of a wild Mustang stallion, clearly taken with a telephoto lens. A distinctive dark dappled gray coat. Black mane. The same horse that was standing at Jack's fence line right now. She was specifically studying this stallion, Deputy Mitchell explained. According to her notes, he's the lead stallion of the Red Desert Band. She'd been observing him for 3 months. Her research focused on Mustang intelligence and social behavior. She'd named him Guardian because of his unusually protective behavior toward his herd. Jack looked at the wild stallion, Guardian, still standing at the fence, still watching. So she knew him. Had been watching him. And when she was dying in the snow, he found her and protected her. It looks that way. Jack, she devoted months to studying this horse, trying to understand wild horse cognition and behavior. And when she needed help, the horse she was studying became the reason she survived. The irony was profound. A researcher studying animal intelligence had her life saved by that very intelligence. Guardian hadn't just stumbled upon a human in distress. The stallion had made a choice, had decided to protect, had maintained that protection for hours, and had cooperated with humans during the rescue. As if understanding he was being discussed, Guardian released a loud whinny, tossed his head, and then turned and trotted away, heading back toward the open rangeland where his herd waited. The magnificent horse paused once at the ridge line, looked back toward the ranch, then disappeared over the rise. Jack felt an odd sense of loss watching the stallion go. "Thank you," he said softly to the empty landscape. "Thank you for saving her." 3 days later, Jack received a call from Billings Medical Center. Dr. Lisa Brennan had regained consciousness and was expected to make a full recovery. She had severe frostbite on her fingers and toes, requiring treatment, but she would keep all her digits. The doctors called it miraculous. "She's asking for you," the nurse said. "She wants to thank the person who found her." Jack visited Lisa Brennan in the hospital a week after the rescue. She was sitting up in bed, her hands bandaged but her eyes bright and alert. When Jack entered, she immediately tried to sit up straighter. "Mr. Henderson, they told me you're the one who saved my life." Jack pulled up a chair. "I helped. But the one who really saved you is a wild stallion you've been studying. Guardian, you called him." Lisa's eyes filled with tears immediately. "I remember," she said quietly. "Not everything. I was disoriented, hypothermic, slipping in and out of consciousness. But I remember Guardian. I remember him standing over me. I remember feeling his warm breath on my face. I thought I was dreaming or hallucinating, but he was real. He was very real. And he stayed with you for hours. Stood over you, blocked the wind, kept you warm enough to survive until I found you." "Tell me everything," Lisa said. "Please. I need to know." Jack told the whole story, finding Guardian standing sentinel, the stallion's cooperative behavior during the rescue, how he'd followed the travois back to the ranch. Lisa listened with tears streaming down her face. "For 3 months, I've been arguing with colleagues that wild horses demonstrate advanced cognitive abilities, problem-solving, emotional intelligence, even empathy. Most of the scientific community dismissed it as anthropomorphism. They said I was projecting human emotions onto animals acting on instinct." She wiped her eyes. "But Guardian didn't act on instinct. He made a choice. He chose to protect me. Can you tell me what happened? How you ended up in that field?" Lisa explained. Her rental car had gotten stuck in deep snow on a back road. Her phone had died, she'd forgotten to charge it. She'd made the fatal mistake of trying to walk for help rather than staying with the vehicle. Disoriented, cold, exhausted, she'd eventually collapsed in Jack's east pasture. "I remember lying in the snow, unable to get up, knowing I was going to die. I could feel myself getting colder, getting sleepy. And then I heard hoofbeats. I thought I was hallucinating. But then I felt warmth, felt something standing over me. I opened my eyes and saw Guardian. He recognized me, I'm sure of it. He'd seen me observing him for months. And he chose to stay. He chose to protect me until help came." "He didn't just stay," Jack said. "When I approached, he positioned himself between you and me, protecting you. But then he allowed me access when he realized I was trying to help. He followed us all the way back to my ranch, making sure you were safe. That's not instinct, Dr. Brennan. That's intelligence and compassion." Lisa pulled out a tablet from her bedside table. "I want you to see something. This is footage from my last observation session with Guardian's herd, 2 days before I got stranded." She played a video showing Guardian interacting with his herd. In one sequence, a young foal had gotten separated from its mother during a windstorm. The video showed Guardian leaving the main herd, finding the lost foal, and carefully herding it back to safety, staying between the youngster and potential danger, moving slowly to match the foal's pace, continuously checking to ensure the baby was keeping up. I titled this clip, "The Guardian," because that's what he is, a protector. Not just of his own herd, but apparently of any vulnerable creature he encounters. Including me. Over the following months, Lisa's recovery continued. She lost parts of 3 toes to frostbite but regained full use of her hands. Her research on Guardian and wild horse cognition became a published paper that gained significant attention in the scientific community. Her first-hand experience as both researcher and rescued subject added unprecedented credibility to her findings. The paper argued for a paradigm shift in how scientists understood wild horse intelligence, suggesting capabilities far beyond simple herd instinct. including cross-species empathy, long-term memory. Guardian had recognized Lisa even in her distressed state, problem-solving, recognizing that Jack was there to help, not harm, and sustained goal-directed behavior, maintaining protection for hours. Jack followed Lisa's recovery and research with interest. 6 months after the incident, she returned to Wyoming to continue her research, this time with proper winter survival equipment and multiple backup communication devices. Jack accompanied her to the east pasture one clear June morning. The snow had long since melted, wildflowers covered the meadow, and the temperature was a pleasant 70 degrees. They sat on horseback at a respectful distance as Lisa glassed the area with binoculars. "There," she said softly, handing the binoculars to Jack. "That's Guardian." Jack focused on the magnificent gray stallion, now leading his herd across the meadow. Guardian was everything a wild Mustang should be, strong, alert, protective of his family. Several new foals gambled around the herd, and Guardian kept careful watch over them all. As if sensing he was being observed, Guardian stopped and turned his head toward Jack and Lisa. For a long moment, across 200 yards of open meadow, the wild stallion and the two humans regarded each other. Then Guardian tossed his head, acknowledgement, recognition, or perhaps just coincidence, and returned to leading his herd. "Thank you," Lisa whispered, though the horse couldn't possibly hear. "Thank you for giving me a second chance." Jack watched the herd disappear over the ridge, Guardian bringing up the rear, always watching, always protecting. The cowboy found himself thinking about that frozen morning, about impossible odds, about the mysterious bonds that sometimes form between humans and wild creatures. He'd spent 47 years on this land working with horses, understanding their behavior, respecting their nature. But Guardian had taught him that there was still more to learn, still mysteries in the natural world that defied easy explanation. Some bonds transcend species. Some acts of courage happen in silence, witnessed by no one. And sometimes, the wild things we study and admire return the favor by saving us when we need it most. Guardian continues to lead the Red Desert Mustang herd today, now documented as one of the most intelligent and socially complex wild horses ever studied. Dr. Lisa Brennan's research on wild horse cognition has changed how scientists view these magnificent animals and has influenced policy decisions about wild horse protection and management. Jack Henderson, now 70, still ranches the same land and reports seeing Guardian's herd regularly, always from a respectful distance, honoring the wildness that saved a life. The east pasture where Guardian stood vigil over a frozen woman has become known locally as Guardian's Field, though its exact location remains undisclosed to protect the wild herds. If this incredible true story of survival, intelligence, and the mysterious bond between humans and wild horses moved you, please subscribe for more extraordinary animal rescue stories. Hit that like button, share this video to honor Guardian's heroic vigil, and tell us in the comments. Do you believe wild animals are capable of making conscious choices to help those in need? Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the wildest hearts are also the most compassionate, and the creatures we study from afar might be studying us right back, waiting for the moment when they can repay our curiosity with their courage.